missing one person? Oh, yeah. Where's Ed? Okay. Hopefully Ed rolls in here. I didn't see him at the pickleball grand opening. Oh. We got Zach online. Well, I think we can get started. Hopefully Ed shows up here soon. You ready, Chad? All right. I will call to order the Planning Commission at 6:33 on September 21st. First up is approval of minutes from August 17th. Any changes for anyone? Or a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Randy, second by Stephen. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. I do not believe we have anyone for public appearances for non-agenda items. Everyone's here to speak on something on the agenda, so that's good. And so agenda review, anything we need to change around?
I think a number of residents are here for an item that is not until F. There was a request to perhaps move that up the agenda. However, I think items A through E will go fairly quickly. So I don't have an opinion, but just wanted to let you know.
All right, anyone up here want to move those up or get through A through E? I know there's some people here for those as well, but we're okay with trying to get through those quick? All right, sounds like we'll try and get through those as quick as we can here. So going to the agenda items, A is the first one, and I think Jason is here to speak on this. It's a public hearing and consideration of conditional use permit request CU 240121. Jason, if you want to kind of let us know what you're doing, that'd be great.
Yeah, you bet. Jason Geiger with Geiger Realtors, working on behalf of the buyer to purchase this building. And this building is currently vacant. Was formerly was it a Ninja?
No, the laser tag.
A laser tag or something? I don't know. I wasn't there when it was that, but I call it the old acre floor building. And they're looking to purchase it and turn it into a gymnastics operation. So if you're familiar with Gymfinity on Nesbitt Road, it's pretty much, that's the best comparable.
All right. Sonia, anything for staff report?
So the property's on Marketplace Drive. Thank you. Property's on Marketplace Drive, its own business highway. The request is for a conditional use permit to allow an amusement and recreation use, which, as the applicant describes, is a gymnastics facility. It's primarily for youth. In our staff review, we were primarily looking at parking and hours of operation. We have no real concerns. The parking appears adequate. They are providing 27 stalls, and at most, they said there would be a total of 8 coaches and 10 parents, potentially 10 parents on site or more. So that's 18 or more. We felt that was adequate for drivers if there were 27 stalls. And the staff recommendation is for approval with just 2 standard conditions.
All right. I have some other people who want to speak from the public, so I can open the public hearing right now. And the first person I have up that wants to speak is Sonny Leflin.
Oh, no.
That's you. Okay. Never mind. Then I have, looks like these are for other ones then. Oh, let's see, we've got, looks like Robert Fulford is registering in support of, from Verona, is registering in support of the above matter and says it's a good use and good for Fitchburg. And let me just make sure I don't have another A on here. Nope, looks like everything else is, all right. So I can close the public hearing and open up to, unless these are for A. Oh, no, all right. So I'll open up to comments from the Planning Commission. If anyone has anything.
I got just a quick question. The former use was laser tag. Wasn't that an amusement or recreation service, and is there an existing conditional use permit already in place?
Good question. I don't recall what the status of that conditional use permit is, if they had one in place. But in any case, this being somewhat different in terms of children's and drop-off with parents, we would be approving this conditional use permit specific to this facility. Yep.
Anything else? Or a motion?
I'll move approval of conditional use 2401-21 with the two conditions as noted by staff.
Seconded by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, next up is a public hearing, consideration of conditional use permit request CU 240521. And I'm not sure who is here exactly, but it could be Nathan, Greg, Brian, Kelsey. Nathan's on Zoom. All right, Nathan, why don't you tell us what you're doing here?
We're doing a what's called a midterm remodel on the Taco Bell out here on McKee Road, and we're refreshing all the customer touch points, interior, exterior, and addressing parking lot needs to make sure that everything is safe and looks good. And part of the remodel includes converting our menu boards to the Taco Bell standard digital menu boards. We do have some that will be going on the interior, but for this request, we have an exterior digital menu board going up. Surface area on that is 18 and a half square feet, which is less than the 20. And it has minimal change points throughout the day. I believe one, with the exception of just the order confirmation piece on the exterior digital menu board.
All right, Sonia, staff report?
As noted, this request is by Taco Bell on McKee Road. Our ordinance requires a conditional use permit approval for any electronic menu board sign. Staff has not identified any concerns. The sign is proposed on the back side of the building facing a private street. So again, the staff recommendation is for approval with 3 standard conditions.
All right, so I can open the public hearing. I don't have anyone from the public that wants to speak on this, unless I'm wrong here. Raise your hand quick. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open up to any comments from Plan Commission. Ed?
Sonia, is there any particular reason that we need the third condition, or could that just be eliminated? I mean, does it really matter?
Right, I'm double checking that right now. The requirement is from the sign code, section 26-83.
I think we had that for signs that you could see from the road, that we didn't want them changing all the time because they'd distract drivers. But it seems to me this came up once before at a menu board, and that I believe we eliminated this.
Yeah,
Yep, that's not specifically required, so it was probably a carryover from another example. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
I guess I would have that same thing. I mean, I don't think that they do breakfast right now, but if they did, that would say that you couldn't change the menu for breakfast, which would be weird.
Right.
So.
Right, so the gist is I don't think we care how many times you change this during the day.
Yeah. Good enough.
Anything else? Or a motion?
I'll move approval of CU 2405-21 with the first 2 conditions as noted by staff.
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Rich. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, so that is approved. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
All right, next up is public hearing and consideration of conditional use permit request CU 2404-21. And then we've got Dave Heidi here and Pat Schmitz, and I'm not sure if anyone else, but come on up and tell us what you got.
Well, I'm Pat Schmidt. I'm the architect. I'm representing Dave Heidi and his project called Little John's. It's a 24,000 square foot vacant building that was the A1 furniture store, and it's going to be converted into what would be a large commissary kitchen with a smaller kitchen, training kitchen, and a restaurant. The main comment that I had was to bring some material samples. We're going to reface the building Right now, it's a combination of EFS and old brick and so forth. But basically, the intent is to resurface the building with a siding, and I'm going to use the product, probably LP Smartboard. And use a 6-inch lap siding on most of the building and an 8-inch lap siding over the EFS on the front of the building. And then we'd be using it like a grayish standard brick for the base of the building on 2 varying heights at like a 42-inch height and then another taller height in the front of the building. I brought color samples. The colors we're trying to get in the building are grays for the brick and a blue color for the main portion of the building and perhaps a darker blue for the trim around the windows and so forth. And of course, any flashing and trim would probably be some type of a gray, anodized gray and so forth. And I did bring some samples. Do I bring them up there or do you want to come?
Maybe go on one side and we can pass them down so people can take a look. That'd be great.
Any questions for me while you're waiting?
We'll do a stat. Anything you want to add?
I know it looked like that was also for is that also for a liquor license as well on there? Or is that
license
C
would
and,
be-
I saw like C and D, was that both us or?
So C and D are both. The idea is the architectural design review. So there's kind of 2 pieces. One is just the conditional use to allow the use, and then the other one is the actual design of the building
Gotcha.
itself. So we'll take them one at a time, but they're both with this project. So do you want to do a staff report?
All right, so the conditional use permit is to allow a restaurant. They're proposing a 17-seat restaurant within the building. I have the floor plan up on the screen, and the portion of the restaurant, I believe, is just this corner over here with the 17 seats.
Correct.
Is that right? Thanks.
Yep.
They also, the other part of the conditional use permit request is for drinking place. And that's specifically added as the applicant wants to allow serving and consumption of alcohol within the building. But I believe the intent is just to have that within this community space during special events, so it won't necessarily be a tavern sort of use. The goal was just to make sure that's accommodated and allowed in the zoning, and then separately they would request liquor licensing for that premise. In terms of the use, no real concerns identified. I'll just mention parking, since that 144-seat community space is rather large. If you apply the restaurant parking standards to that in combination with the 17-seat restaurant, they would meet the code, which requires 54 stalls on site. The other primary uses in the building are the commissary kitchen, I believe, one specific room for meat processing and another for other cooking. Architecturally, a lot of changes. I think some substantial improvements compared to what's out there today, and the applicant sort of described that. A couple things to point out. Again, just appreciating some of the improvements made specifically to what was the back of the building, which is Anton Drive. Our Anton Drive redevelopment plan calls for those rear elevations to sort of be improved over time, because they used to turn their back to the neighborhood, but now with access being different on Verona Road, they have more of an interaction with that neighborhood. So they are proposing full windows, removal of a loading dock, a more decorative door on that west elevation. There are also full windows on the north elevation, which help move the building in that direction as well. Staff comments question the EFS use a little bit on the front end, specifically the blue color. It was a little bit difficult to read in the electronic materials provided, but there was some concern. We just asked the question, does that fade over time? EFS tends to wear a little bit. So in response, the applicant provided another option, and that's in the packet. I can bring it up, which shows lap siding, as they mentioned, instead on top of that EFS. So the staff recommendation does include that option 2 as part of our recommended approval. And then I'll just also note that they do exceed the 65% impervious surface ratio. They would be at 70% with the proposed improvements. This does come down from current ISR of 72% The Plan Commission can approve that exceedance, and staff doesn't have any concerns with that being an improvement as long as they obtain their proper erosion control stormwater management permit. And there were some questions at that from a staff level. I think porous pavement was proposed in utility easements, and we're not sure if the utilities would allow that. So just some work there on the applicant's end to obtain the proper permit for that. So staff recommendation then on the conditional use permit is for approval with the one standard condition, and architectural design review recommendation for approval with 7 conditions. Looks like standard, and then erosion control, stormwater maintenance agreement, a note regarding that pervious pavement. Any new lighting shall be full cutoff or dark sky compliant. We've noted specifically the architectural elevation is option 2 with the lap siding instead of EFIS. And then number 7, there were some comments in the application materials that colors maybe weren't entirely finalized. So if that's still the case, we noted that we would just like to see updated elevations for the record, and I've included that as being able to be approved by staff.
Yeah, we have some, as it is with any building, we're waiting for some contractors to get back and subs to get back. So as soon as we get all that updated, we'll make sure to get back to you guys.
So we'll take this into pieces. First, we'll open the public hearing for the conditional use permit. I don't have anyone from the public that wants to speak, I don't believe, at least in my list here. So seeing nothing else from the public, I will close the public hearing piece and open up to comments, questions on the conditional use permit piece for Planning Commission.
I had a quick one. I vote in the building. Thanks. And I think Dave Hyde's an asset to the community, so I'd encourage everybody to just push this through.
Thank you, guys.
Other comments? I think even though the impervious surface is over 65%, it's less than what it was, 72 down to 70, so that's an improvement. So I was happy to see that.
And that was actually when you brought up the improvement for the back of the building, we were planning on doing that even before being asked. For us, one of the biggest things is being a part of that community is it's always just looked like the back of a steel warehouse, and so we really wanted to make it accepting. That's why I wanted to have the windows in there to make it really feel like you were coming into like a home instead of just a warehouse for it. So, yeah.
It's fantastic. Anything else? Or a motion?
I'll move approval of conditional use permit CU-2404-21 with the one condition.
Second.
Sent by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, now we've got the architectural design review. Any comments about this or questions? Or a motion if there's nothing?
Nice improvement. Appreciate the update and the materials in particular. I think staff had I agree completely with the lap siding as opposed to the EFIS, so, right. I move approval of architectural design review for 5302 Verona Road with the 7 conditions as noted.
Second.
Sent by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, you guys. We're looking forward to it.
So are we. All right, moving along to E, final plat request FP 240021 by Phil. I know Phil's here somewhere. I'm not sure if you are speaking or Deb is speaking, but
Chris.
or is it? Oh, sorry, it's got someone else instead. Is someone online, Phil, do you know, or? Okay, we can go right to staff report then.
All right, so I'll just bring up the plat here. Here's kind of an overview. This little insert map kind of gives the context of the area that we're looking at. So the request is for final plat approval for the second addition to Terra Vesa. This kind of shows the whole preliminary plat, and then this is the second addition in the hatched line here. The request is to create 33 buildable lots and 17 outlets. The buildable lots are mostly T3 and T4 in Smart Code, which allows in the T3 a little bit more of your traditional single-family detached, slightly larger lot. The T4, more small lot, single-family detached, as well as attached townhomes, similar to what you're seeing out there now. And a few of the outlots, I'll just note, are planned to be the T4 attached townhomes, but they're requested to be platted as just one outlot at this time. You might recall that we had some replats for the Encore townhomes in the original Terra Vesta plat, and the builder then had to come back and replat to make some adjustments. So rather than do that rework later, they're just leaving it as an outlot for now. Otherwise, we found that it's consistent with the preliminary plat and don't have any concerns. The recommendation of the final plat is for approval with 13 standard conditions of approval. Just note an error in the staff report notes that we're approving the preliminary plat, but it should be updated with the final plat number, which is FP 2400-21.
All right. I don't have anyone from the public, so comments, questions from Plan Commission? I know things are building up fast out there. I was talking to one of the teachers that teaches at the school, and she's building actually out there, so that's great to see that she's gonna be walkable to work. I think that's what we're hoping for. All right, is there a motion?
I motion to approve FP 2400-21 with the 13 conditions as outlined by staff.
Second.
Sent by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. Thank you. All right, now we have F and G go together as well. But we got the rezone request and then a resolution. And so first, we have a number of people here. Come on out. Yeah, tell us what you have here, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. My name is Michael Samuels. My address is 414 West Burr Oak Drive, Arlington Heights, Illinois, 60004. I'm here tonight with the ANDEV group for our petition for rezoning and permission for a GDP for the property on Wilshire Drive. We have our team with us together. Dunn Anbar is available. Dunn is the CEO of the company and handles all of the decisions regarding where we're going to build and how we're going to finance it. Tom Ostrom is also here. Tom is the owner of 41 Management, and he also owns several operating companies for senior assisted living buildings. He will be the operator of both of these buildings if we are successful tonight. We have available both Paul Phillips on Zoom and Jessica Vaughn from JSD Engineering, also to answer all of your questions. Ken Kozakowski, the project architect, is also available by Zoom, I believe. And so the entire team is at your disposal. Jessica has a couple of comments to add as she prepared the memo regarding the questions that the city staff, et cetera, had posed to us. So I'd like to turn this over to Jessica, and then we will be here after this presentation to answer questions.
Excellent.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. I think the last time we were in this room, I believe it was July 21st or thereabout, and we looked at a concept plan. Since then, we had recommendations from alders, the commissioners, and neighborhood residents to host another neighborhood meeting, which we did. We did that in August, and as a result of that meeting, we had really good attendance. The turnout was great, and there was amazing collaboration that went on, and there were great comments. As a result of those comments, we were able to make some tweaks to the site plan, and I wanted to highlight a few of those. I won't go into the gory details of of the rezoning request, because I know Sonia will do that, and staff always does a really great job with presentations, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. I guess the thing that sticks out the most to me on this site plan is the landscaping. The neighborhood was very passionate about the landscaping and respecting kind of the natural landscape and thinking about trees that you would oftentimes, that are more natural to Wisconsin's landscape itself. And then we also wanted to focus on screening. So our goal was to create that level of screening along the streetscape, but also provide something that had foliage year-round, color, texture as well. So we have a nicely landscaped berm that undulates through the street frontage that varies in height from 2 to 4 feet to provide that screening. And the neighborhood had a lot of input on the number and types of trees that we were looking at. So the site plan and the landscape plan have been updated to reflect the neighborhood comments that we did receive. Something else that came out of that neighborhood meeting was the location of the loading areas and the trash and refuse areas. As a result of that meeting, the comments that we heard from staff with the concept plan as well as the neighborhood was to kind of move those areas as far back in the site as we possibly could. Originally, we had our loading areas up along the street frontage, and those have been moved to the side and behind the building front elevation there. And then our refuse areas have been pulled back further into the sites and tucked a little bit away from that multi-use path, which is part of the city-owned outlet that we have also added to the site plan. With that, we also had a lot of comments at concept plan with regard to trip generation and traffic. So we were able to commission a trip generation analysis that was provided in your packet this evening that provides a comparison of what would seemingly be a by right development versus the proposed development and the difference in the trip generation there. If you have any questions, we're happy to field those this evening. And then I think the last piece is the addition of the multi-use path through the city-owned outlet, which is right in between the two sites. That multi-use path connection will provide connectivity from Wilshire Drive to the existing path infrastructure and system. We would be relying on city engineering to provide us with design details for that in terms of width and construction typology. So those are the big changes that have occurred since the last time we saw you guys and reviewed the concept. We're here to answer any questions, but I know Sonia will go over the more gory details on the rezoning request. So.
All right, yeah, if you're done, Sonia, if you want to go to staff report.
All right, so first I'll just provide a reminder on PDD zoning for public information. We deal with it almost on a monthly basis, but PDD, Plan Development District, is a negotiated sort of case-by-case, create-your-own zoning that is proposed by a developer specific to this project, and then that's negotiated through 3 Plan Commission meetings as well as council approval in order to get the zoning entitlement in place. That's implemented through three steps at the Plan Commission. We already held the pre-application PDD. The primary purpose of that meeting was to discuss whether PDD zoning was appropriate, and no concerns with using this type of zoning were identified at that time, and it appeared the project was consistent with the future land use category, which is high-density residential, requiring a minimum of 9 dwelling units per acre. So given that, the applicant proceeded, and the item that's in front of us today is step 2, which is PDD GIP, Plan Development District General Implementation Plan zoning. If this is approved by the Plan Commission and Council, then the next step would be PDD SIP, which is a specific implementation plan, and that's where we'd have all of the very detailed plans. There's already information in your packet tonight, but things like very specific landscape plantings, the engineering plans, very specific architecture, those are typically the final details that are dealt with at that SIP stage. And then concurrently, the agenda would usually include architectural design review. One other procedural note, next on the agenda, we have a request that's also related to this project, and it's a resolution that would consider granting an exception to the project from Chapter 62 of state statutes, which limits the distance between 2 community-based residential facilities, or CBRFs, and those are required to be 2,500 feet apart. In this case, the applicant would like to be closer to an existing, or closer than that, to another existing facility in this neighborhood. So the council does have the ability to grant that exception. And they would also be requesting Part 2 from that statute, which is to exceed a certain amount of the population in the Aldermanic District. So all of the CBRFs in Aldermanic District number 2 with this project would just be over 1%. 1% is otherwise the maximum, and what they're requesting is 1.4%. So the Plan Commission would make a recommendation on that resolution to council, and then council would have the ultimate authority on whether to approve that exemption. I also have some notes on parking and density, but I'll save those, I think, if the Plan Commission has questions. I guess I'll just note on the parking real quick for public information as well. They are proposing a ratio of half a stall per unit on each property, and I think some of the justification provided in the materials being, assisted living and memory care, typically less driving. They also identified that there would be 40 employees, so enough parking stalls to accommodate employees of the 2 buildings. And again, action would be recommended on approving the rezone request to go to GIP, and the draft ordinance was included in the packet that kind of establishes some of these basic parameters.
All right, we've got a number of people that either want to speak or have registered, so we'll open the public hearing. I'll start with people here in person that want to speak, and then we'll go to people online that might want to speak. I have Bill Jetzer from Fitchburg first, and then Kelly would be after that. Bill, if you would like to come up and one on either side, whatever you like. They both work.
Hello, Bill Jetzer, 2822 Richardson Street, not the immediate neighborhood of this construction, but, so that's maybe why I was unaware of the neighborhood input meetings, so I apologize for my late comments. I am generally in favor of this development. I see no reason to deny it. I do have a couple of issues that I would like to bring up. One is, this is a greenfield construction of some significant size. And I read through most of the packet. I didn't see anything at all about the energy efficiency of these buildings. I didn't see any solar panels on the roofs, no mention of, for instance, geothermal heat pumps. Can you tell us what is the energy impact of these buildings? And then secondarily, I think we have an opportunity here with, again, substantial construction for this to have a positive impact on the immediate neighborhood if we had, within these buildings, I saw references to libraries, salons, theater, medicinal, basically pharmacy type things. These are all services that the general public also needs. Can we create a walkable neighborhood here and include commercial/retail space in the same facility? Perhaps, going to 3 stories instead of 2, which would not be unprecedented. A quarter mile away on Brendan Street, the apartment buildings there are 3 stories. And I think, having a small grocery store or a place to get your hair cut or whatever within a 5 or 10 minute walk will cut down on even more car trips than the 210 mentioned earlier in the presentation here. So those are my 2 issues that I'd like feedback on.
And I think we'll have people from the public speak, and we'll have them kind of answer, go through that, and we'll have Planning Commission make sure that we cover everything. We just don't want to do the back and forth, but yeah, is that all then?
That's it for me.
All right,
Thank you.
Excellent. Kelly.
Kelly Jetzer, 2822 Richardson Street. Sure. Kelly Jetzer, 2822 Richardson Street. And my concern is I'm interested to know what safety features are in the memory care facility, because it is right next to open water and McKee Park, where thousands of people gather quite often for very loud late night events. So I just want to make sure that the safety and mental health of the people in the memory care facility is taken into account, because that park should not have to change what it does in response to the people there. But I'm not sure that those loud park events make sense with a memory care facility.
Great questions.
Okay.
We'll make sure they have that. Answer that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Online, who do we, Gabriella? All right, Gabriella, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I'm just here to listen.
Oh, just, okay, great.
Thanks.
All right, so that's the only person online that we have for this one. All right, then I've got some written comments I can read through. Daryl Felming from Fitchburg is registering in opposition. It doesn't have any comments on why. And Richard Fries from Fitchburg is also registering in opposition. And I've got an email from Sharon Brantmeyer from Fitchburg. Please note that I'm in opposition of the rezoning. I can't attend because I have a work meeting. I attended virtually the whole presentation for the Planning Commission that was held in June or July. I wasn't that opposed to development until I listened to the meeting. I just don't think this is a good use for the space. My concerns are water and parking and density. Water, you should see McKee after storms. Fitchburg did a terrible job of planning for water with the developer when our condos were built, and we still have problems. I heard the Planning Commission say, oh, that is great, you have some water planning for the new development. Not sure what kind of formal study with experts is needed, but this needs to be done to protect the condos on Wilshire and McKee Park from runoff. It's swampy in there and worried for the neighbors and the water table. Parking, loved how they said all the people would park in the lot. Have you seen the units on Chapel Valley? Guests and staff park on the road. It is over parking for large events at McKee, but that road is too narrow. Density, I think it is still too much in that small space. Finally, I was upset with comments on project viability during the meeting. One person said this is not part of their governance to say with all the other care facilities how they would stay in business. I think the city should care and don't want a place that can't pay taxes and gets grown over. I don't think that will happen, but his comment rubbed me the wrong way. Overall, I think this is not the best use for this space and the zoning should not be changed. Thank you for listening. And then also Kathleen Schultz. This email states our opposition to rezone request RZ 239821 for the land at Chapel Valley and Wilshire Drive. We do not think it is in the best interest of the city or this neighborhood to build this extensive project on such prime real estate and so near similar housing options. This land is adjacent to one of the best features of Fitchburg, a park that is accessed by hundreds of people every day. We appreciate and recognize the gift the McKee family made to our city when the parkland was donated. We want to protect that gift for all to enjoy. However, Fitchburg doesn't owe the McKee family this project. They gifted the land and we accept that building will occur. We oppose the proposed rezoning and construction of this large-scale residence, as well as everything that it would do to ruin the neighborhood. The land should remain as is currently zoned and allow less densely populated construction that is appropriate for this area. Proposed development would increase traffic, a situation that is already perilous and unsafe, as we registered through the city's traffic survey. The roads are narrow, highly trafficked, and we have witnessed many close calls when children, people, and pets narrowly escape being hit by oncoming traffic. More residents, staff, and traffic from deliveries will greatly increase traffic. Having access to the park would also be diminished, and unlike the other areas where there are multiple and well-spaced entrances, the Wilshire side of the park would be vastly different. In addition, the parking lots would be lit at all times, and those lights are very different from lights that would be part of the current zone ordinance. I do not think any of you would want parking lot lights shining in your front windows throughout the day and night. We moved here because this city is forward-thinking, and the neighborhood is a lovely area with houses, condos, and duplexes. We do not need this proposed residence, and buildings of this scale would ruin the neighborhood. There are many other areas of the city that would house the proposed development, and we wonder why the city would even consider such a large build on such prime real estate, especially given the fact the city went to court to defend the current zoning. Registered in opposition to rezone request RZ 239821. And please share the email and address. And this is Roger and Kathy Schultz on Wilshire. And I believe that's all I have for comments, unless I missed anyone. I hope you get those people. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open it up to, first if you want to maybe address some of the questions that people had, that'd be great.
Here, do you want to talk about sustainability measures and safety?
Well, the first question that we came across had to do with the energy efficiency of the building. We do have the project architect available on Zoom, who, by the way, is LEED certified and keeps all green matters in mind when he's designing our buildings. But Ken Kozakowski, I would ask to briefly address that question.
Ken, go ahead.
You may be muted, Ken.
Yeah, I'm just unmuted.
Okay.
Just a correction, Mike, I am not LEED certified. The building doesn't have anything, I guess, as far as solar panels or geothermal or those kind of big ticket items that you hear when you're talking about energy efficiency. But the current energy codes that apply to pretty much all commercial buildings at this point have improved so much over the years that a lot of that initial LEED stuff that came in about 20 years ago is incorporated into buildings almost automatically due to code. So just by following code, a lot of those building envelope efficiencies and lighting efficiencies and HVAC efficiencies are implemented.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So that handles the green aspect. Now, the comment about adding some small retail services, that, to be honest with you, that's not our business. It would be entirely foreign to us. We have no business model for something that incorporates bringing the public in for any kind of retail services. The parking would not be adequate. It really is not a viable option for us.
Memory care safety.
Yes. Memory care.
I would also add that we're not licensed to do that. We distribute.
Tom, do you want
And this is Tom Ostrom from Encore Senior Living.
Yeah, one of the ideas that was discussed was opening up the pharmacy. We distribute medications, but we're not a pharmacy. We're not licensed to sell pharmaceuticals. The residents buy pharmaceuticals from the pharmacy, and we help the resident take the medications. We're not, that's, I don't know what the city would think about having a zoning for retail in a location like this, but that's just not our business.
As far as safety measures for memory care residents, the buildings are secure. All of the exits to the building are alarmed, and they are keyed to the front desk and to the caregivers throughout the building, so that if somebody opens a door, there's a delay.
15 seconds.
15 seconds. There's a 15-second delay. The doors open by a push bar, and you have to continuously push against the bar for 15 seconds before it will open. This gives the staff time to get to the place of the occurrence and ensure that everybody is safe. The garden, the memory garden, the outdoor space, patio space for the memory care building is enclosed. It has a lockable gate so that you don't want people coming in from the outside. If a caregiver wants to take people out, they can do that. But other than that, then depending on the level of impairment, then they will also employ a wander guard system where the resident wears
A band
around their wrist or neck, and if they were to leave the property, then an alarm would go off. So we are very, very attentive and concerned about those issues.
I would just pause for a minute. And Tom, did you have anything to add with regard to security or safety?
Yeah, especially in a memory care building, one of the risks to a resident is someone were to, we call it elopement in the industry, if someone were to get out of the building. Some residents that have Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia do become exit seeking for whatever reason. Some residents are not. but we design our memory care buildings in a way that prevents someone from getting outside of the building, without us being with them. A wander guard system, controlled access doors, it's something that we have to take very seriously, regardless of where the building is or what's outside the building. It gets cold in January and February here. A resident who could get outside in 10-degree weather would quickly die, frankly, if they weren't, if someone wasn't, a neighbor wasn't fortunate enough to find them. So it is very serious, and the buildings are designed to prevent that from happening.
And while we're talking about safety, I know we've been asked a number of times about emergency services.
Yeah, one of the questions that we've been asked a few times is, how often does an ambulance come to our building? So we did a little survey of similarly licensed buildings that we have, and the answer for a building this size is once a week, maybe twice at the most. I will also mention that to the extent that the residents in our buildings would otherwise be residents in the neighborhood, you're probably making those ambulance trips to the neighborhood today. It's not our building that creates the trip by the ambulance. It's the resident who has potentially a fall or a heart attack or a stroke or whatever emergency service. So if they're living at a house, an ambulance will come and get them. If they're living in our building, an ambulance will come and get them. Perhaps less likely because we have a nurse on site. So, there will be some trips of an ambulance to our building. I don't know that it's more than the neighborhood would experience now, and it's not constant or burdensome, in my mind.
Thank you.
All right.
One of the other things I think was mentioned is, will our residents object to noise at the park? There are probably residents who would like things more quiet. They will choose, they get a choice of where they live. They will choose to be on the residential side of these buildings if that's the case. I very much expect that the highest demand will be on the park side of these buildings. Residents like activity. Residents love a concert. Residents love to watch a house being built across the street. I mean, that activity is engaging to them. Yes, our residents probably go to bed a little earlier than an average person, but that doesn't mean that they would feel like a concert outside is unwelcome. I think just the opposite.
If I can add just that, also the building construction. We build a very solid and quiet building using double glazed glass, and the sound level inside the building is excellent. In essence, it's the same as you would have in your home environment. The insulation factors, the windows that we use are residential windows. All of those factors combine to keep the place quite quiet for the residents.
All right, I think those are everything. I go up to Plan Commission. I think just one question, and this might be for the public as much as anything. I know this isn't the first facility like this that you've opened up. Can you speak to how many facilities like this you operate?
We operate 38 communities and 33 of them are in the state of Wisconsin. We have 5 buildings in Minnesota as well. The majority of them are CBRF licensed, like this community is intended to be. And size anywhere from very small 16-unit buildings to 166 units is our largest building.
Lots of experience then doing this. Other questions from people?
I was going to ask the same question. Is there anything in Dane County that we'd be familiar with?
Sure. We have a couple of buildings nearby that are called Sage Meadow. We have 2 buildings in DeForest. One is called Parkside Assisted Living. The other is called DeForest Place. We have a building in Sun Prairie that's called Tallgrass of Sun Prairie. I probably am forgetting, but those are those are the ones at the top of mind that are nearby.
I've been researching this at home for somebody else. So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Not for yourself yet? Okay. All right. Other questions, comments at all? Randy, looks like maybe you want to. All right, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. I've had the opportunity to sit through the first and a portion of the second, and of course this evening. And I appreciate the extent that you go for the security for the memory care, at least what you've outlined. I think that's very important. There have been incidences in the Madison area where maybe the security was a little bit lax, and you pointed out about the 10-degree weather. Somebody has died. That was a few years ago. Very unfortunate, but based on what you're describing, it sounds like you have all of those at the top of your list, and it's very important to make certain everybody's safe and secure. The one question I have, and I think I brought it up early on, and I believe you answered it then, but another resident brought it up this evening about the stormwater. What is your mechanisms to mitigate some of the stormwater in heavy downpour? Didn't you describe that you had some underground tanks, or can you go into detail about that a little bit more, please?
I would just double check and see if Paul Phillips is on the line. He should be on Zoom. He's our resident expert. I can kind of kick it off for him. But we have a combination system that we're proposing.
Yeah.
We have on-site above-ground infiltration basins, which will be located, I don't have a pointer, but. This one?
Yeah, we won't be able to hear you if you don't. Yeah, I just got to turn it on quick.
Is it on?
Yep.
Yep, okay. So we have a combination system. We have on-site above-ground infiltration basins, one right here and one right here, for each respective site. And then we will have underground storage systems as well. There will be an underground storage system here, and I believe the other underground storage system is in this area. And with that, I'll hand it off to Paul, who is our stormwater expert here.
Very good.
Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks, Jess. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I might be slightly delayed trying to do this from home with not the best internet access. But as Jess explained, we have the two systems. We have an underground that will take care of significant amount of the volume, especially off of the two parking areas and half of the roof, which is be underground, as Jess pointed out, in the parking lots on both sides of each site. And that'll take care of two things. One is mostly volume, but also adds a water quality treatment feature in that system. And then the two biofilters, infiltration basins, if infiltration will work in those areas, will also treat the back sides of the buildings and the paths, the patios, the walking path will all be drained into those two basins. And so we have it designed right now to meet the city's code, and which is up to the 100-year storm event, and release it at the existing for the various storm events. So basically it is, what's running off the site today for basically a grass field will be our release rates for the various storm events, and will hold all the increase due to the rooftop and the pavements as we show on the plan. And one of the things we did do, as some of the feedback we got early on, is I'm not sure if we had this at the last meeting, but for the memory care, we changed that to a one-way drive. So we have traffic coming in from, I'll call it the most westerly end of the site, driving across the front. And by doing that, we were able to reduce some of the pavement requirements there. That helped reduce that impervious, which then reduces some of the stormwater volume. I think that covers kind of the overall stormwater. If there's any specific questions I can attempt to answer, I'll be happy to.
No, thank you. You've answered my questions. Thank you.
Other people, Emily?
Mine was more of a comment. I was at the last community meeting, and I just wanted to say I really appreciate how you guys have gone back and incorporated the community feedback.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ed?
I noted in the staff report, and it kind of jumped out at me, that under the current land use plan for this, as a duplex, this project is going to generate 210 fewer daily trips than what it would be if we weren't going to PDD zoning for this purpose. So the concerns about traffic, I mean, really would be much greater if this weren't being done. On top of that, I think it's a great use for the site. I think it's great to, have seniors near the park, and there's gonna be more and more need for senior housing in that neighborhood. I mean, that's a neighborhood that is aging. The baby boomers are going to need a place, and when you get to I guess this is a separate item on the agenda, but I wonder too about our standards with regard to limits on this as we see the aging of the baby boomers, whether they really make sense at this point. I mean, demographics have changed. So I think this is a great project, and I'd be happy to see it moving forward.
Thank you.
I appreciate the comments for things like solar. We can't really require that, but you do have a nice big roof that faces the south that would work well for solar. So something to think about.
We do plan to put charging stations for cars at least.
Oh, good, some charging stations, good. Anything else? Or a motion?
I'll move to approve rezone request RZ-2398-21.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. One nay. All right, ayes have it. That is approved. And then next is the resolution R17921, granting an exception to the statutes. Is there anything that you want to add additionally right at this point? All right.
No.
So anything you want to add?
Could you just remind me who made the motion on that last one? I didn't get it.
That was Stephen and Randy.
Thank you.
Seconded.
And nothing additional on the state statute exemption.
All right. Any additional comments from Planning Commission? Ed?
Yeah, I just have a question. I wonder if we should take a look at this and determine whether our statute with regard to the limitation on the percentage of senior living in an aldermanic district is appropriate given the changing demographics in Fitchburg. And certainly, some aldermanic districts are going to be different than others, but a lot of people do want to age in their neighborhood. And, so to me, this makes sense, but I'm wondering if we're running up against limits that were created long ago when we probably did not anticipate the change in demographics.
Or if it makes sense to look on a broader scale, citywide versus district.
Yeah.
Thing. I mean, you don't want it all in one district, I guess is part of the concern, but
Sure.
it's overall 1%, but not more than 5% or something like that in a specific district. So you could do something like that maybe.
Right. I'm not sure what would really be appropriate because I guess I'm not an expert on demographics, but we could probably, I don't know, maybe you folks know what percentage of the population is apt to need.
The industry statistic that most people cite is approximately 7% of seniors live in some form of senior housing as opposed to a house or apartment. That's just a general industry statistic.
So to that we'd have to apply the percentage of seniors in the population, which.
With the new census, this number might be lower anyway, too. I don't know that we have the new census.
That's right, we
numbers.
will have that information from the new census.
I'll just add, if I'm understanding correctly, the 1% maximum comes from state statute. So we wouldn't be able to change that. It's not our city rule. If it should be 5, we don't have a say in that.
Oh, so it's state statute, but
Yeah.
we can exceed it if we want.
Is it either or?
It's cannot exceed 25 as a population of persons living in CBRFs in the district, or exceed 1% of the district's population, whichever is greater. So we're using the 1% because that's greater. They have a total that exceeds 25 persons. But the statute says the applicant, the burden of proof is on the applicant to justify why such a facility is appropriate, and they could, use that type of information to justify. Not all CBRFs are senior living. My understanding is that some could be other sort of treatment facilities that, maybe a concentration of those types of facilities might not be as appropriate in a district as an exceedance of, those in a senior population, so.
Additional questions or comments? Or a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution R179-21.
Second.
Look at that one to Zach, since he's got a delay online. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right, moving on to H. Preliminary plat request, PP 239521. And do we have, I think, Steve or Jeff online to speak to this?
Yeah, Steve, you're welcome to go first, and I can add any color after you've spoken.
Honestly, Jeff, I don't have much to add to this. I see planning department's comments, and those are straightforward for us to make, conditional comments. I think everything in here is in your ballpark.
Great. Okay, thanks, Steve. So really the biggest comment that I have, we talked about this a little bit at Ag and Rural Affairs. It's on Lot 4 and the fact that that has a slightly irregular line than what is standardly done in these farm lots. And the reason for that is kind of twofold. One is that it follows the line of the lease with MG&E. And so it means that no of the land would go into Lot 4 and then have that portion move into a leased component in Lot 4 if the O'Brien brothers chose to sell Lot 4 and out Lot 2. And the other reason is that it's necessary to keep the land like that so that MG&E can access their equipment. And if we moved it to where it was just a straight line, it would leave some dead land that would not be accessible for farming. It would mean that we would have to disrupt the quiet enjoyment from MG&E to be able to ingress and egress, because there's no natural ingress and egress to get to what would be created if we did a straight line. So it really doesn't have value as farmland. It's much more valuable if it goes with Lot 4 in these lot lines as drawn, and is for the quiet enjoyment of Lot 4 and Outlot 2, as Outlot 2 has to go with Lot 4 in any sale. So I think, Sonia, that kind of hits the high points that we've been discussing, and then I'd turn it over to the council and to you to discuss anything you'd like to.
All right, Sonia, staff report.
So we looked at this last month and it was tabled to continue working out a couple of issues. Overall, 4 lots are created. Lot 1 on the east side of Seminole for the farm. Lot 2, which is planned to be sold to Edgewood College for their development. Lot 3, remnant piece of ag land that is in solar lease, as is Lot 1. And then Lot 4 is the farm consolidation lot. 2 additional parcels make up the plat, and those are the 2 outlots. Outlot 1, the triangular piece up here, outlots are not developable. And then the small one down wedged in between the path and Seminole Highway. So the primary issues that we discussed last time was Lot 4 doesn't actually have the required frontage on a public street, which is 50 feet, but it's a very unique condition and has been in that condition for a long time. Department of Administration plat review also reviews this, and we had a conversation, and we're both comfortable with what's proposed here, which is Outlot 2, which has been widened compared to last month, would get you the minimum 50-foot frontage on Seminole Highway, and we would deed restrict it to Lot 4, thereby meeting the ordinance, and then they would always be sold together and maintained by the same owner. And then the second issue was the driveway that exists over the Badger State Trail. DOA was comfortable with the idea that that exists by prescriptive easement, since it's been in use for over 20 years, and I think quite a lot longer than that. So we are comfortable with that as well. A couple other things to note. We have identified the glacial kettle areas on the plat. I should say the surveyor has identified them rather. And those are closed depressions where water would not flow over, or it has no natural outlet. So 1021 is the elevation there, and there's a note on the plat that restricts any development that's 2 feet higher than that for flood reasons. So I know the property owners also shared that with Edgewood College, but they will need to take that into consideration, no structures within 2 feet vertical above that elevation. And then finally, the issue of, or I guess, Seminole Highway and Lacey Road will dedicate additional right-of-way to each of those roads. And then with the final plat, will require a condition for a subdivision improvement agreement, and that would have the required improvements associated with the plat. And right now, the discussion is around a turn lane on Lacey Road. Again, that detail's not here tonight. It would be with the SIA as a condition of the final plat. And then finally, we're getting to this Lot 4 issue, which was the primary discussion at Ag and Rural. And Jeff explained that just as a matter of past practice, a farm consolidation lot does not use a claim. So they get to just create a new lot around these existing buildings. Unlike other people who come forward with a new rural residential, they have to use a claim. So we always are trying to, if you get to do a farm consolidation lot, minimize the area around that to the smallest amount possible to accommodate those buildings and then any drainage fields. This is larger, and we usually don't, change our lot lines or our past practices just around a lease agreement. A lot is created in perpetuity. This could exist forever. The lease agreement right now is 35 years. Still a long time, and perhaps it would be renewed. We don't know. But as mentioned, Jeff sort of explained why the lot line is here like this. Ag and Rural Affairs was comfortable with it as proposed. Again, just being a pretty unique situation. It's really behind this trail anyway. And I guess I'll just leave it there if there are more comments that Ed as our representative wants to add. Otherwise, the staff recommendation is for approval with 9 conditions.
All right, I have at least one public comment here. I have Patrick O'Brien from Fitchburg registering in support of the above matter of this here. And actually, I don't know if Jane Larson's still here. I'm not sure which item actually, now that I look at it here, that you wanted to speak on. I hope I didn't miss. Is Jane still here? Okay. Hopefully I didn't miss her. I don't think she wanted to speak on. When I got it, I thought maybe it was part of the same thing, and I realized now there's no agenda on it. So my apologies, Jane. All right, so that's all I have there. I don't know if Ed or Randy, you want to speak to the Ag and Rural Affairs. Ed, you want to do that?
Sure. Yeah, the main discussion was with regard to the southerly lot line on Lot 4 and whether that could be straightened out. And it was kind of a discussion, how do you balance, the loss of ag land, which you try to lose as little as you can, versus, really having a straight lot line. And there really wasn't any way to do both. But what it boiled down to is it's really driven by the lease with MG&E. And, if we wanted to make any significant changes to this, it would require amending that lease as well, which we could just imagine was not something that was going to be easy. So we really thought that it's fine as drawn. And that's what Ag and Rural recommends, is approval of that as drawn.
Okay. Anything, Randy, you want to add?
No, I'm in agreement. Ed summed it up quite well. But, Roger Cohey and Pat O'Brien and myself met on Sunday and tried to sort this out in the field. And then once we heard that you'd have to amend the lease agreement with MG&E, I think we need to step back and go with what's proposed that we have in front of us right now. So,
okay. Any other questions or comments at all?
This might be frankly a stupid question, but I don't quite understand why can't Outlot 2 be part of Lot 4 and provide easement to the Badger State Trail?
Because they're disconnected, because the Badger State Trail segregates them, and we can't have a parcel that's split into 2 pieces. Okay. So it has to be created as its own outlet.
Not a stupid question. All right, anything else? No? Motion, someone?
I'll move approval of preliminary plat request PP 2395-21 with the 9 conditions as noted.
I'll second.
Seconded by Rich. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you. All right, now we've got I, J, K, and L are kind of all with this, on the same thing here. And Fred, I see you're here. Come on up and you can tell us what you're doing here.
Fred DeVillers, 5210 Sickle Cow Road, Madison, Wisconsin. Is that all you need?
Yeah. And then
Name
you
and
can
address, okay.
Yeah, talk about the project then.
Yeah, okay. Well, not much has changed since the last time we met, 2 months to the day when did the Bucks win that night? I think they did, didn't they?
They did. Yeah. Some of us were there.
Other than some advancement in the plans, both civil and the architectural plans. Essentially, the site is, it's been zoned for 54 units, and so what we have here is 10 units of duplexes, 36 units of, is that better? 36 units of townhomes, all those units will be owner occupied, and then the 8 units of, in the CBRF building.
Good. Anything else? Now we can go to the staff report, but yeah.
Yeah.
Just an overview. All right, Sonia.
Could you give us a quick overview of architectural improvements? I'll give my staff report on the SIP zoning and then the ADR for the townhomes and the CBRF.
Okay.
So if you have any comments ahead of that.
Other than to try to complement, I don't want to say we want to make them look exactly the same, but complement the surrounding architecture. For example, the ADR doesn't apply to 2-unit buildings, so the duplexes they weren't designed, plus I was intending on selling that land to home builders, but we're going to agree to put into the agreement that those duplexes be built with a similar architectural style as the ones right across the street in Sassafras there. The townhomes certainly have been designed to complement the townhomes to the south, which are those, I believe they're 9 and 10 unit buildings on the south side of East Shore Parkway. And then the CBRF building has a similar architectural style to try to blend in with all the rest around, not only around the site, but also within the site as well.
Sonia?
Okay, great. So there are 3 agenda items for us tonight on this project. The first is the PDD SIP, Specific Implementation Plan zoning. So that establishes this basic site plan and the use that you're looking at on the screen. The 5 duplex units are shown on the north with 2 units each, so 10 total, and then, 7 townhome structures, mostly with 5, and there's one with 6 fronting on East Sherrill and Crinkle Route. The CBRF building is on the north side as well, and this facade is about 300 feet long, so 150 feet for each wing here, with entrances on the face. All of the parking would be on the rear. This is a private drive. The SIP establishes the setbacks between the 2 buildings, the maximum building height on all of the buildings, the parking, and establishes parameters for architecture. As noted, for duplex units, like single family and 2-family throughout the city, we don't require architectural design review for that. But so you don't actually have to get ADR, you don't have to apply for that and get approval for each of these units. But because this is SIP zoning, higher architectural design is expected, and it should sort of unify with the rest of the development. This SIP document does have some requirements, and those are listed in the staff report. Some basic parameters for the duplexes. So all of the buildings would be designed to complement surrounding architecture and will include horizontal siding, masonry accents at the foundation, architectural shingles, various siding trim boards. Acceptable architectural styles shall be craftsman, prairie, colonial, or similar. And then it also establishes some basics, like there are no accessory buildings allowed. It establishes that the garages will always face the private drive, duplex driveway width, et cetera. So that's kind of the overview of the SIP. I guess we will also need a subdivision improvement agreement for the public improvement, which is water main, and that will be underneath the private drive. Moving on to architectural design review, and it might take me a minute to bring those up on the screen. But we have elevations for the townhomes and for the CBRF. No real concerns with the townhome buildings. However, there were staff comments on the CBRF building. I will bring those up. Okay. So this is the overall elevation of the CBRF building. Again, 300 feet in length. It's very long, each one being 150 feet. So you've got your west wing and your east wing. Ideally the architect would be here to present the details, but as mentioned, there's horizontal vinyl lap siding, masonry base, vinyl sort of fence material, double hung windows, vinyl shake siding. I believe these are 8-foot tall walls.
They're changed to 9.
They're changing the
Yeah,
height.
per your request, they changed them to 9.
Thank you. Is that how it's reflected in this drawing as well?
I was told yes.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a scale thing.
Okay, great, thanks. So there were, I guess I'll back up. The concerns identified were originally the 8-foot walls. There was a lack of some architectural features over the doors. The doors were just a standard, it looked like kind of aluminum door. Just in general, the concern was lower quality finishes than was expected. In addition, there were, I think, 5 different colors of siding, which staff just questioned. Us not being architects and architectural design being somewhat subjective, we asked if that was really appropriate. In response, the architect has now shown 1 color on the whole building.
2.
I'm not sure, 2?
They have 2.
All the same color in the vinyl horizontal siding, is that correct? And
No, 2 colors of the siding.
okay. Where are they and what are they?
They've got the flint color, and then there was another color. I wish they would have put a legend on there, but I think they're doing this literally the same day as the comments. There's another summit, so there's a summit and the flint. Nope, summit, no, that's
So brick
not it.
veneer is color summit.
Yeah, it's on there somewhere. I remember looking at it. Clay.
We've got clay vinyl lap siding here.
And then the other color was the, I just saw it.
Flint lap siding looks the same to me as the clay.
Yeah, well, they've got 2 different colors. It just didn't show up in the computer rendering very well.
Okay. And then I notice here we have vinyl lap siding flint at some of this brick.
That'd be they definitely have a misprint there.
Sure. So in any case, a little bit difficult to evaluate without seeing the differentiation there in color. From this rendering, it looks all to be one, monotone, large roof structure, same color throughout. These doors, I'll also mention, are all, I believe, on the same plane as the building wall. So that was one of our concerns, is minimal building articulation. Again, this door being the same plane as the wall with just the gable accent above, so no columns coming out or encroachment out beyond the building. And there's a bit of a recess here on each side of the wing. Again, the concern just being 300 feet, very large building with the same treatment throughout.
I actually had asked them to add the columns because I want those exits covered from rain and snow. They just literally didn't have the time to draft it. But we'll get there.
So I guess the staff recommendation then for architectural, no real concerns on the townhomes, I'll bring those up as well. Recommendation is for approval with 9 conditions. If the Plan Commission wishes to approve the CBRF architectural as well, that's also listed in the staff report with nine conditions.
All right, so let's take these one at a time, because I think there's actually 4 items here. The first is the public hearing and consideration of rezone request. And so I will open the public hearing. I do not have anyone from the public registered that wants to speak. I'm assuming that's still the case. All right, so I will close the public hearing, but then open it up to comments from the Plan Commission or questions on the rezone request first. Thoughts? Ed? No?
No issues with the rezone request.
No one? All right. Someone want to do a motion then if there's no Ed? Or I'm sorry, not Randy.
Chair, motion to approve rezone request RZ-2399-21.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. So then we have the ADR design review of the townhomes first. And it looks like Sonia is getting those pulled up right now. And I know she said that staff didn't have concerns with this piece.
I think the only thing is we didn't have a color rendering, which made it difficult to evaluate as well. Just notes accent color, darker color.
The goal would be to actually get physical samples and submit them, but even those are tough to get these days in addition to ductile iron pipe and everything else. But that's, the goal is before we build and pull a building permit would be to get physical samples to submit to Sonia and her staff.
Okay. I guess, Sonia, would that be a condition for like staff to just see samples before building? I don't know if you want that all on you or not, but.
Right. I mean, the expectation is always that we're ready to approve a full architectural package at Plan Commission, that we're not designing on the night of the meeting or dealing with those things afterwards. But that being said, I'm not able to identify if there are any concerns or issues with the choices here on the townhome. The Plan Commission could, if they wanted, add a general condition like provide color elevations and samples, and if staff has concerns, that could come back to Plan Commission, and if no concerns, we could approve it, something like that.
Other questions on just the townhomes piece? We'll get to the CBRF next. Stephen?
I maybe should have asked this at the rezone request, but what is the impervious surface for the whole project? I can't remember if we covered that when we talked about this 2 months ago or not, but just to double check.
Someone on staff should have.
I know that Christine is with EORs on the line. Maybe she knows this by the top of her head. I'm just going to look on the plans if I can find it.
Christine, do you happen to know?
I don't. It is on the site plan, if somebody's got that up.
It is 62.64%.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I would be in favor of adding a 10th condition for staff to review and have it come back to Plan Commission if any concerns.
I think that sounds good. I know people in the neighborhood have asked a lot of questions about when this is going to get developed, so I think overall they'll be happy with it, because I think it does, overall fit into the neighborhood. It's not like there's a 4-story building or something like that plunked down in the middle. I think it does complement the neighborhood. Any other questions or comments? Stephen, do you want me to do the motion with your additional condition?
Sure, I'll move to approve architectural design review for Lot 1 CSM 13827 for the townhomes with the 9 conditions as noted by staff, plus an additional condition for staff to review the samples or colored renderings, and if any concerns arise, to bring that back to Plan Commission before approval or any building permits issued.
Second.
All right, seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Now we have ADR of the CBRF buildings. Comments, questions?
One question Sonia had pointed out, and I think the applicant had mentioned also putting any kind of roof or building articulation. I know we've got the 2 indentations or concave areas on the building. If they were to do anything outward towards the street, is that going to run any issues with just encroachment or lot line definitions or whatever you want to call it? I'm not using the right terminology here.
It definitely could. They've established the setbacks on the site plan with the SIP that we just approved. I don't recall off the top of my head whether that would accommodate some minor encroachments or, I can't think of the other word either, but extensions of that coming out to create more of a porch. I don't know.
We certainly would design it to remain outside any of those encroachments. I think there's an easement all around, there's easements all around the property, so we'd avoid those.
Other,
Yeah, do you have the elevation on that building?
Yeah, I have to find it again, sorry.
See it in the packet. I share your concern with regard to articulation on this building, and I would actually like to see you work with staff and come back with a different design.
Oh, I'm completely on board, believe me.
Okay.
It's a challenge getting architects to get anything done these days because
Yeah.
they're just so busy.
Yeah, yeah.
well, it
And
sounds like
they're short-staffed and they're still working remotely, which means everything is moving slower
Right.
still.
Right.
'cause it sounds like there's some improvements you want them to
Oh,
make
yeah.
as well. So I
Yeah.
think that's where, I had that uneasiness of approving something tonight when it sounds like you're not even completely comfortable with where it is yet.
No.
Either.
Yeah, I think that the townhomes are a lot closer. It's just a matter of colors and materials, and I trust Sonia on that, but I think there's just more to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like maybe a postponement until next month might be.
How much time do you think you'd need to be able to, I'm sure what your time frame is for the project, really.
I suppose if I were to ask the architect to give me what I want, they could have it done in a week or so, but
Yeah.
I want them to pull those roofs out and put some columns in with masonry piers.
That'd be great.
That's what I wanted 2 or 3 weeks ago. They just couldn't get it drafted.
Yeah.
So should we postpone for 1 month with a date certain?
I think we can postpone it. We can either do a month or I don't know if we could do it until the ADR, new renderings are available. I don't know if we can keep it open like that, but we might be able to, if just in case that you can't get them to do it in the next month, that you don't have. I mean, then we can always just postpone it again next month. I mean, it's not like you have to come if you don't have it and you want us to postpone again. We can just do that as well. Takes 2 minutes. What do you think, Sonia?
Yeah, I think if we can postpone or table indefinitely, and we could work with Valerie to make sure the language is correct as we, move forward on future agendas. It's just easier than having to put it on every agenda and make sure the packets get carried through. So, and then it would be at the time that you resubmit by a deadline, then we would put it back on the agenda.
I think postpone is generally a little cleaner, but I think we could probably postpone until the new ADR is available, new renderings are available.
Okay.
Not necessarily to next month, unless if they're ready next month, great. But if it's 2 months, that's okay too. So I think if someone did that as a motion, I'm gonna say it's okay. I'm the chair. I can do what I want, right? Kind of, not really.
So moved.
All right, moved by Ed.
Second.
Seconded by Stephen. All in favor of postponing until new renderings are available, say aye.
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 Aye. And opposed, nay? All right. And then I think that Al, is that also
Yeah.
this project?
Yep, we also have early issuance of permits for a large project. The Plan Commission must approve those, and that would be issuance of permits prior to acceptance of public improvements. So in this case, most of everything is in. What we're dealing with is the water main, so pretty straightforward, and everything in the staff memo are the standard conditions.
All right. Any additional questions or comments?
So this isn't an issue for us to approve this while we still have other things tabled?
Ready?
So they would not be able to get a permit on the CBRF building without architectural design approval anyway, so that would have to come first. I guess the early start permit could apply to the duplex or the townhomes and allow them to start horizontal grading, footings, foundations, and utilities, and then they could go vertical when adequate water and fire lanes are in place. We would hold anything on the CBRF building until ADR was approved.
It's not a backdoor approval or something like that.
Might want to specify it in there just for clarity. But yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
The early issuance doesn't override the need for the building permit anyhow, correct?
Correct.
So really, I mean, we're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We should be.
All right, I'll move approval of early issuance of permits for Lot 1, CSM 13827,
Second.
with the 8 conditions as noted by staff.
Second.
So we don't need to have a ninth condition to exclude CBRF building?
I think that if they need the permit to do that, and they can't get the permit without the ADR.
Yeah, this doesn't override the need for the building permit, so.
Yeah, and they need the ADR approval to get the building permits, so.
Okay.
All right, all in favor of approving with those conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, nay. All right, that is also approved. All right, thank you, Fred.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
All right, conditional use permit requests, CU 2384-21. I don't think, oh, Dale, hey, Dale, come on up. You want to speak to this quick for us and give us an update on where you're at? That'd be great. Trying to hide with me with that hat on there, go incognito.
It's been a long day. It's a good day, though.
Good.
I'm Dale Sticka. We had gone through this earlier in the summer and to run some programming for arts programs at a facility at 2841 Index Road. And we had been given conditional use permit up until the end of September, and I'm here to extend that if that's possible.
Right. And can you speak to how things have been going with events and programming?
We started out with the Isthmus Jazz Festival, one event there that featured local jazz musicians, mostly of youth. We've done theater workshops. We've had jazz players from the Lincoln Center come in and do master classes for kids. The theater group there's dance groups that are doing workshops all summer. The company that I actually work with, Sosonic, has been doing workforce development, so there's been technical support and training for the length of the summer from July until October 8th. I've trained a team of young adults how to do sound stage, and we've been doing work with the Mad Lit and the UCAN people. So actually it's been a very productive summer, and with all the momentum we built, all of the people with COPA have asked that we continue on through the winter and keep this going and not let the momentum stop.
Great. Great. Do you want to do a staff report, Sonia?
Sure. We approved this with previously at the Plan Commission level with a sunset date of October 1st. Thank you to the applicant for meeting with the building inspection fire department to obtain the occupancy permit and make them comfortable with the space in this building that was going to be occupied. This item tonight would be to extend that. It would be the same use, the same permit, and it looks like most of the same conditions there. Condition number 5 would ask for a new sunset date 1 year from today, and that recommendation came from our fire department after a reinspection of the building, just noting that it's being maintained at a level that allows occupancy now, but there's potential for bigger issues. And they noted a leaking roof, overgrowth in areas of egress. So again, okay for the use here, but just some concerns that if those potential issues were to get worse, there would be desire to re-inspect and potentially then expand again if needed. And that is all I have for the staff report, so approval is recommended with the 5 conditions.
All right. Questions, comments? No? Or a motion as well?
Motion.
Go ahead, Randy.
Excuse me, motion to approve certified survey map request CS-2402-21.
That's the next item.
Nope. We are on M right now.
Is that not what I read?
No,
I apologize, I jumped straight down.
middle of page
Something's in my
14.
throat, excuse me. Conditional, motion to approve conditional use permit CU 2384-21, reapproval.
With 5 conditions.
With the 5 conditions, thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Emily. All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Aye. And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you,
All right.
Dale.
Thank you
Keep up the
all.
good work.
All right.
All right, looks like N and O are both withdrawn, so do we just ignore them? Or do we table indefinitely, or what do you want us to do?
You have to take some action, so we don't want
Okay.
to approve it or deny it, so just table indefinitely, and it would just, be out there indefinitely.
All right,
Move to indefinitely table 5N and 5O.
Second.
sent by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And opposed, nay. All right, those are tabled indefinitely. And then P is Resolution R-17521. And Mike, I think you're probably the one leading this off. If you'd like to tell us what's going on here, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be in front of the Plan Commission. Since the last time we had an opportunity to talk with you, we've had a lot of opportunity to work with CETA and the Housing Advisory Committee on the development of the workforce housing endowment that we had described a number of months ago. We prepared a little PowerPoint document that we're going to work through with it for you. And Steve Affelbacher, my partner, is going to walk us through that. But I also wanted to, before we get to that, I wanted to thank the Plan Commission members that responded to the survey that we have prepared that was very helpful in getting our arms around what the community was really looking for in a program of this nature. We've completed our study and we're presenting it this evening to you. We've already had the draft presented to CETA, and their final consideration of that is coming up day after tomorrow. But with that, I don't want to take more time than you have this evening. I know you've had a long agenda, but I'm going to go ahead and run the slideshow for Steve, and Steve will begin kind of walking us through it. We've got the slideshow that's an abbreviated version of the full report, which I believe you had also received previously. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Steve Affelbach. Steve.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for listening to us. We wanted to talk about the summary of our feasibility study that we had prepared. As you recall, as Mike referred to, back in April, end of April, beginning of May, we did a survey to try to give us some direction as to try to define then what we would say is workforce housing, affordable workforce housing. And with that survey, the outcome was to look at a 3-bedroom, 2-car unit of somewhere around 1,400 square feet that came out of that as to the kind of type of building that would be reflective of the type of structure that should be constructed in Fitchburg. And what we did then with that particular concept, based on your feedback, the feedback from CETA, the council, and the mayor, was put together then an analysis to say, is this concept feasible There's probably a lot of product out there that's maybe similar in design to this, but with this workforce affordable housing concept, it's really geared at individuals who are maybe first time into the market, looking at a home, don't have a credit history, don't have cash on hand to be able to put down the 20% down payment, as a way to look at attracting them into the community and making it available for workforce, for employers, and for the community. So with that concept in mind, we went ahead and talked then to, as a part of the survey, various builders, bankers, various management companies that were identified in the survey, and discussed with them the concept, brought back the results in the study, and used that information in the analysis that's prepared. In a minute, Mike is going to walk through the number analysis that we've prepared to test the financial feasibility of this, to give you a background on that. Our purpose this evening is to explain what the outcome of our analysis is to then in turn look in terms of next steps, should this proceed then as a project that would continue on into next year, with the idea that we would begin to define sites, and in turn then begin to define other partners that would be a part of accomplishing then the ultimate construction by CETA for the project. As been identified in the outcome here, you'll see in the report there are a number of open questions. Those open questions were discussed with CETA, and Mike is also going to review later on in the presentation the outcome of those questions for consideration by the City Council. So Mike, could you turn that? Basically, what we did in our analysis is we began to look at numbers. We hit the worst time in the construction industry for the increase in costs. As you know, lumber prices went up substantially, like 3-4 times. We did our best estimate in terms of what those numbers would be, running those off various builders. We arrived at $165 a square foot in our analysis in terms of our construction costs. And we put together what we think represents trends of basically the supply and cost issues that are currently on display in the housing industry. With that, the outcome of our conclusion is that we believe that the concept works with certain caveats. Clearly, it works for what we defined as the 80 to 100% in the survey as to the adjusted gross income that would qualify, which is basically individuals that are in that $74,000 to $99,000 a year in terms of income. That this concept would work for the 85% to 100% of adjusted gross income, and should a grant be achieved of $20,000 per unit, or a total of $200,000, that would also work then for a family of 3 at the 80% medium income identified there. And you'll see then at 80% that we're talking of two earners, that's something around just under $18 an hour in regards to annual salary then that 2 individuals would have to achieve that level of income. We don't know if this product were to proceed, what that mix would be. And so in the analysis, we ran it at 80%, we ran it at 90%, we ran it at 100% to give us a feel as to what the ultimate ownership would be achieved. And as you'll see then, based on their income, ownership is achievable within 4 to 10 years, 4 years for the 100%, and 10 years for the 80% at the income levels that have been identified based on the assumptions in the report. Our goal then is, once, if this is accepted and we were to proceed, would be to refine the model specifically with the site. And in turn then, we've also done the analysis that indicates that the majority of the funds that are available from CETA, from the tax increment district, would be repaid and be available then for another project that could be undertaken once those individual units have been sold and funds are repaid to CETA. And we'll talk further about what that dollar amount is as we go forward. Mike, if you could change that again, please. We did identify in the report, and this was a good discussion with CETA in regards to risk factors. For the sake of time, if there are some of these that you'd like to talk more about, we'd be happy to do that. But I did want to indicate that in the report on Exhibit 5, we identify the risk, and you'll see such things as increasing interest rates, unforeseen life events, construction costs, people leaving the program early, or management concerns in terms of the management company running this, potentials for challenges in market value, reserves sufficient to keep the building at a level that's necessary and is reflective of the community. Delays and in terms of the repayment of the funds and fluctuations and other factors were taken into consideration, and we've identified what we think would be mitigating factors that would help us address these issues should these issues arrive as we proceed, if we would proceed with the project. With that, Mike, let me turn it over to you and let's talk specifically about the numbers and give the Planning Commission a feel for the analysis that's been done and what the outcome of that analysis is.
Okay, thanks, Steve. As Steve said, there's a number of things that can come up that can surprise us along the way, but we've tried to identify what those things could be. And again, on page 5 in the report and beyond, we talk about each one of those factors and identify what we think could be the answers and solutions to some of the mitigating factors. We wanted to talk to you a little bit, let you know what we saw most recently in terms of cost. And we've had these numbers vetted with 4 or 5 of the local builders that we were given names to talk to in the Fitchburg market. But essentially what we are talking about here is a 10-unit townhome type of product. The total cost of which we're estimating at $3,324,000. You can see this sources and uses statement shows that the costs, obviously construction about 2.7. The acquisition costs are for the site are estimated around 320,000. There are some professional services costs, financing costs, and other cash accounts for reserves that we built into the numbers. The sources of those funds, approximately 2.1 to 2.2 million, could be either bank financing, bond financing, or cash, depending upon the extent of the amount of dollars that the city wants to provide access to from the closure of the 2 tax increment districts that are slated to be closed in 2023. In addition to that, we have dollars that would be dedicated, that would be returned to the Community and Economic Development Authority by the program once the residents themselves were able to flip to conventional financing, which you'll see in a moment. We projected out would occur anywhere from 4 to 10 years, depending upon the level of income that they come into the program with in the first place. We expect that every individual coming into the program would have to have some skin in the game. We're asking a minimum of $5,000 of equity that each tenant would bring to the program. That money would be at risk to them for this program if they walk away from it. Generally, they would lose it unless there were mitigating circumstances that we'll talk about a little later. We do project a couple $100,000 here in grant funds being infused into the program to make it feasible for the lowest level of the income stratum that we're trying to target. So the total, again, about $1,200,000 in cash and about $2 million in loan funds to finance the program. We've run several scenarios, and these are just 4 of the roughly 8 to 10 scenarios that we had run. But each one of these columns represents an example. The first column is targeting the individuals that will be at 80% of the median family income in Dane County. As Steve said, for a family of 3, that would mean you'd have probably 2 wage earners and a child, which means that if they were both earning about equal income, they'd only be in the range of about $18, just under $18 an hour with their income. The cost per unit is at $332,000. A mortgage would be necessary for that example of about $245,000, as you can see, if you've got more income, you can afford a higher mortgage. This is an example with 90%, and then final column is at 100%. And so we're projecting different levels of mortgage depending upon the income level. The reimbursable TID grant would have to be at 82,000, not grant, but reimbursable TID advance would be $82,000 for the 80% tenant and $32,000 for the others. The non-reimbursable portion would be for the costs associated with creating a reserve fund and for administrative program costs. We have, as we said, that $20,000 grant fund that's in there. Ultimately, at the end of a period of time, there would be a period in which equity would be built into the project from the growth and the value of the property itself and the equity that had been put in. We estimate that in the case of the 80% homeowner, it would take 10 years for them to convert to conventional mortgage. At that point in time, the balance owed on the loan would be $158,000. It would be paid off. We would be looking at $82,000, $158,000 on the conversion. The residual equity is about $130,000 after we paid off the TID and the bank loan, and then with that accumulated cash flow, we would also need to take additional dollars to maintain the income at no more than 30% of their to maintain their housing cost at no more than 30% of their income. People have asked the question, well, why aren't we going lower than the 80% for household income? There's two reasons for it. One of them is that, number one, there are a number of programs that are already in existence for that segment, for the 60% and lower low-income housing tax credit programs and others, but there aren't that many programs out there for the 80 to 120%. Also, the very important feature of this program is that it keeps individuals at a level in terms of their outlay without having to dedicate more than 30% of their income toward housing. At the point of conversion, we'd be looking at retaining $74,000 of the residual equity for their 20% down payment and an additional $76,000 in order to further reduce the mortgage so that their cost of housing did not exceed that 30% level. This would leave about $10,000 in addition to the $80,000 that would get repaid to CETA for program renewal. This cash flow statement, I won't go all the way through, but it just shows you over a period of 12 years, growth in the median family income for the county. Right now, median family income for the county is $92,000. If it grew at 2% per year, it would be at $115,000 by year 11. We're looking at 80% of that, so only this would be an individual with $74,000 of income, or a household with $74,000 of income. We want to keep their housing costs at no more than 30%, so that would be $22,000 of the 74. From that, we have to take a share for their condominium fee, for their payment in lieu of taxes. We expect that they will be having to pay taxes, certainly in full, when they convert it to conventional financing during the period of their equity growth that would be owned by the CETA, and they would still pay a payment in lieu of taxes to the city, and we've accounted for that here. They're paying insurance, their management fee. That leaves them about $12,000 for a mortgage, and here we show the mortgage would be $1,051 a month maximum. We're only going to have to make it at $927 at the interest rate that we're projecting, which is at the takeout point about 4.5% and currently at 3.25% initially. Steve, you want to take these next two?
Yeah, so let me try to answer the question of where does the money come from and how is it used? And so we've looked at this individual that's at 80% for a 3-person household. We've continued this analysis to say in year 10, if we get to the point, the numbers work out, we sell the home, the individual is able to buy the home, what happens for the payout and where does the money come from? So let's just walk through the numbers quickly. Remember, we've assumed then that from that initial construction cost, a 2% increase in value. And so that's the $370,911 is the sale price of that unit in the 10th year based on that assumption. At that point, the loan that's necessary to be paid off that CETA has is $158,000. And so there's a net equity of $212,000 to the program. In addition to that, we have the individuals paying 30% of their income. Their income goes up. And so if there's anything left over, it goes into a surplus fund. And at the end of 10 years, we've projected an additional $30,000. So we have $242,000 for distribution. Now, where does that go then at that point? The individual tenant, because they're purchasing the home, would need a 20% down payment. Now, there are some first-time home buyer programs that we've not factored into this that would accelerate this. But we've assumed a conventional financing approach, and so that's the 20% down. We've keeping their house payment at 30% of their income, so there's an additional 76 that's necessary to keep that mortgage at a point then that they're paying 30% of their income. The recommendation from CETA then is that at the time of sale of the house by that individual or at the end of 30 years, that 76 comes back then to the CDA, to the endowment fund, and is paid back then at that time, once the home is sold or the end of the mortgage period. And at closing then, in addition to that, CETA gets paid the original $82,000, the additional $10,000, so the $92,000 comes back into the revolving fund and can be used for an additional project. So that's how it works at the time of closing when you get to a point where there's enough for the 20% down payment to be able to handle the purchase of the lot. So Mike, we've rolled the numbers up, and the next slide then will show you what that means in terms of just the 80% individuals. Now this will vary because there'll be 90, maybe 100%, but at the 80% individuals in terms of benefits, the city then would have the unit worth $3,709,000 in terms of benefits of the program. The $820,000, the initial equity payment is paid back into the revolving fund. The payments of the payment of the residential equity is paid back. That's that additional $10,000 we had talked about. So $920,000 comes back into the fund. In addition to that, there's $85,000 that was originally TIF monies. If that's not spent, that would go back then into the revolving fund for another program. And then the equity, which is that payment at the end when they were to sell the unit or at the end of 30 years, would come back. And in this case, if it were $76,000 as we looked as in our last example, times 10 units, that would mean then that there would be an additional $760,000 that would come back into the fund at some point down the road. So that's the benefit from the city's standpoint. From the tenant standpoint, they would have a unit valued at $370,000 with equity projected to be $74,000, and they would cap their housing costs then at 30%. So Mike, do you want to pick up from there, please?
So we had, as part of the discussion, there were a few points that we wanted the CDA and the Housing Committee to think about in terms of its recommendation to the council. They did, and they came back at the last meeting and gave us some direction, and so the consensus on the open issues is reflected here. The first question was, what happens if a tenant has to leave the program early due to a life-changing event that's beyond their control? The consensus of CETA was that they'd be allowed to exit the program with a prorated share of their upfront equity of $5,000, along with a proportionate allocation of any appreciation on that $5,000 that occurred during the period from the time that they started the program to the time that they left. So that would be a determination that would be made on a case-by-case basis, but generally, they still would be remain at risk, and only in the event that there was a non controllable life-changing event would it be reimbursed to them. The second question was what happens if with equity upon the conversion to a conventional bank loan and the sale of the property. In that case, the tenant, it was recommended that the tenant would retain their equity needed for a 20% down payment, plus the amount necessary to reduce the mortgage to achieve a housing cost of 30% of the tenant's income at the time of the sale. Any amount above the 20% though of that purchase price would ultimately be paid back to CEDA at the time of a second sale after that initial conversion or at a 30-year point, whichever came sooner. The third point was we were asked to look at the question of utilizing a land lease or land trust or some other type of restrictive covenant to restrict subsequent sale of that property to a similar type of tenant. The consensus of the committee was that these covenants would make it more difficult to resell the property based on the impact or the input that we received from bankers and builders is that type of deed restriction or land trust approach was discouraged. However, there were two members of the committee that wanted to have further analysis done on the land trust concept to see if it could be married with this program. And so we've been asked to submit a subsequent proposal to do some further research on that, which we have done. And then finally, on the grant fund question, if there is a grant that's received, the question is how to allocate it. It was recommended that it be allocated equally to all program recipients in the program. And so I know we've gone through this very quickly, and it's something that we spent a lot of time in reviewing and vetting with an awful lot of folks. I'm hopeful that the plan commissioners will have had some time, or if not yet, will have time to review the full report, because I think this brief presentation can't do full justice to what has been done by the committees in looking at this. Ultimately, the objective here was to try to provide a program for the community that would be oriented toward home ownership. It would be oriented toward the first-time homeowner, and it would be oriented toward trying to maintain affordability for individuals within that 80 to 100% median family income segment, and keep their allocation for housing at the 30% of the income level, rather than having to stretch their, try to stretch their budget beyond that. And I think this program does that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our formal comments, and we'd be glad to answer any questions that the commissioners might have.
All right, thank you both. I'm going to ask one question first before I get to other questions, because I can. One question I had on the issues that you had up there. Number 2, you talked about, you know, they can, if they pay it or they sell it in less than 30 years, that they would have to pay back anything over 20%. Is there some mechanism where, let's say they're at year 27, is there some mechanism where they come back and say, hey, like, it's year 27, for whatever reason, we are selling right now, will you waive this? It's 3 years. I'd imagine at this point, we're going to say, yeah, this has been a success, and we're happy with the way this has gone. And yeah, we're going to, you know, it's 27 years. I know it's not 30, but we're not going to make, you know, kind of do this, or we'll do it as a proportion, you know, maybe something like that, where they kind of do that. Is there something in place, have you talked about something like that?
Well, I'll take a whack at Steve. Maybe you've got some thoughts on this too, obviously, I'm sure you do, but I think it's a balance, Mr. Chairman, here. What we talked about with the committee, with CETA folks and with the Housing Advisory Committee, the tenant is coming to the table with a $5,000 downstroke of their own cash equity. In addition to that, they'd be getting the difference between that and what's necessary to enable them to have a 20% down payment. Those are dollars that they're going to be able to retain. But in addition to that, it's the additional amount over and above that 20% that we're talking about, whether that is providing, the committee discussed whether that was providing too much cash to sweeten the pie on this thing, and keeping in mind that these dollars that get repaid to the program are intended to be recycled and used again for other to create continually to create a new housing for subsequent individuals that would enable them to have access to this type of a program. So I think the short answer to your question is at some point in time in the future, I'm guessing that this will probably end up being revisited based on actual experiences as we go. But at this point, that was the thinking of the committee. Steve?
No, I think that's a good summary, Mike. We're trying to walk the line between what's reasonable for CETA in terms of the investment that they're making and having the opportunity then to recreate another project, and what's reasonable for the tenant that's there. And there isn't an easy answer, and we're trying to balance both sides of that equation.
I think if you take a look at the dollars that are involved there, potential dollars that are involved, I'm going to go to this slide. If you take a look at the bottom line here on this chart for the first column, this example at the 80% level, this is the equity at conversion. That homeowner is going to be retaining $74,000 ad infinitum. And then there's an additional $76,000 over and above that is necessary to infuse into their capital stack at the point of conversion in the form of equity. That's the portion that we're talking about getting repaid back to the CDA. Community and CETA within that 10 to 30 year time frame. So that I think is the question, and that's on the 80% situation. If we go to the 90%, that drops to only 24,000 that we're talking about having to infuse. And when we get to 100%, we don't have to put anything in over the 20%. But keeping in mind that these amounts are necessary in order to keep that individual at a point of not having to spend more than 30% of their income for housing going forward. And so that was the thinking.
Yeah, thank you. I think the key too that you said is that in the 30 years that this is ongoing, there's going to be some tweaks to this program, and I'm guessing that none of us are probably going to be still involved in city government in 30 years. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. But I think overall, I just want to say I'm a huge advocate for this program. I think it's a fantastic way to encourage more home ownership in Fitchburg, and I'm a huge advocate of that. I think that needs to happen and make it affordable for more people as well. So I think it's just a phenomenal program. I'm really excited to kick this off. And other questions, comments? It's complicated, but Ed.
Yeah, I had a question on the risk factors on page 4. One of them was potential for challenge of market value of units. What does that mean?
I think that question there was the issue of is the individual, the tenant, going to be happy when we assess the value and say, here's where we're at. In terms of, is it too high, too low? You could see where if we were hitting a time crunch or a market crunch where the values drop significantly and they're expected to buy that out and don't see that as a good investment, they'd be in a position to be able to say, well, maybe I don't want to go ahead and purchase that. We've built reserves into the program to try to handle that, and we would envision the CDA to be in the CETA to be in complete control in terms of the unit. So if the individual did not want to purchase that unit, the CDA would have the ability to control ultimately what happens to that unit. And I don't think that the tenant, if deciding not to purchase it, will create a hardship. Our concern was that tenant not deciding to purchase it would create a hardship for the program.
Okay, so that market value is established at that time by appraisal?
Yes, by appraisal.
Okay. All right, so kind of walk me through this. I want to make sure that I understand how this looks if I'm a potential tenant coming into this. Do I actually, I'm referred to as a tenant, do I actually own something up front? I'm putting $5,000 down. What financing do I need initially? And then this gets taken out at some time with permanent financing. I guess I'm just trying to follow this from the standpoint of the potential user of this program.
Well, I can start, Mike. The individual would be a renter at the initial start of the program, and the unit would be owned by the CETA. CETA would own the unit. They would rent they would screen the tenant to make sure that our concern is making sure that the tenant that is going into the unit, one, has the skin in the game, so to speak, the $5,000, but also a home ownership mentality, so that they're interested in home ownership and that they'll take the initiatives that are necessary when someone owns a home. They would rent the unit. They would pay 30% of their income towards rental, which would be then payment of the mortgage, payment to the management company, utilities, payment in lieu of taxes, all of those things that are identified on the schedule that you'll see in the PowerPoint that's there. And then when it reaches a point then where the equity, the loan that remains outstanding on the individual unit, the loan that CETA has at that point is affordable. In other words, they can purchase it. The tenant is at that point able to use 30% of their income to purchase the unit by having enough equity, the 20% that we talked about. They would secure financing by the unit from CETA and pay CETA back.
Okay, so that at that point they become owner of the unit. Okay.
Yes.
And until then, they have a contract with CETA, and that contract provides for them to have the right to purchase that unit under the terms of the agreement.
So it's assumed that depending on where their income is, that at least within 10 years, they're going to purchase the unit. But on average, I mean, people move every 7 years. So I'm just wondering in practice, I'm sure this has been done before. Does this really work?
Well, it does work, but it works better, much better, the shorter you can make the time frame. We would prefer, in fact, at the onset when we first conceived of this concept, and even when we first ran early numbers for Fitchburg, based on the costs that we were facing at that time, the 80%er was probably going to be, I think, Steve, we had projected that individual could convert within 7 to 8 years.
Yes.
At that point in time. The increase in costs are what forced the program on that end to have to move to a little longer time frame to make that feasible. Key to this will will be and this was a conversation, like I said, we had some great conversations with people, just to give you a flavor, and it's reflected in the report. But on the management side, we spoke to Sue Boyan of Boyan Management on this, who has had experience with this type of a program with the city of Madison and others. And the key thing here is the upfront screening of the individuals and the ongoing education, especially in the earlier years with the individuals. And I think that the extent to which the individuals can continue to see that they're getting, that they're building equity in this product will continue to incentivize the individual to see it through. But the 10 years is longer than we would have liked to have seen. We'll be honest about that. That's no question.
Yeah, and maybe just to add is that we've assumed conventional financing. In talking to 3 different bankers, there are some first-time homeowner programs that are out there that require less equity. And we've agreed that we would follow up and explore what that implication is on the numbers. And I think, and my gut is that would allow us to buy the unit quicker than that 10-year period, because the equity requirement under those programs is considerably less than the conventional financing. But we've not factored that in at this point.
Yeah, just so that you know, the banks that we talked with include the Oak Bank, Park Bank, and Cross Plains State Bank in the immediate area. And then the builders that we talked to included Gary Gorman at Gorman Company, Chad Whedon, Encore Homes, Danny Lowry, Tim O'Brien, Chris Ellers at Veridian, and Brian McKee, Midwest. So we got a lot of great insight from each of these individuals about the concept, and really tried to tailor it based upon what we learned from every one of them.
Other questions, comments?
Oh, I certainly agree. It is likely to work a lot better if they get into a situation where they're refinancing it out sooner, and you're going to have private mortgage insurance rather than having the full 20%. But as long as that's something that can be built into the program, I think that's going to help it work better.
Rich, did you have some?
I'm very impressed. I personally, my first home was a sweat equity home where I had very little down, but within a year I owned a house. I like everything I've seen. Some of the stuff is over my head, but what I have understood, I really am excited about. I'm also always been kind of irritated the way workforce housing has been thrown around as just as a buzzword, when in fact what you're doing, a lot of the workforce housing projects are actually just subsidized housing. But with the 80% AMI, I think we hit just perfect. And I'm really happy to hear all this.
I was just going to say, in general, the concept I'm absolutely in love with. As we got into the numbers, maybe it's just too late after a long day for me to really make sense of it. I have a bit of a hard time when following those numbers. I just pulled up Realtor.com. You've got 2-bedroom rentals, or 2-bedroom condos, for sale at $240,000, $260,000, 3-bedroom at $259,000, right here in Fitchburg. And so when I look at that, I look at the size of this project and the amount of equity needed to get it off the ground, and then all of these what ifs. So if you have someone who moves out after 3 years, another, of 10 units, maybe you could have 3 or 4 of those turn over within the first 10 years. What does that look like versus the programs that are out there to help with, to me, the cost is rather prohibitive compared to what's actually on the open market today, other than that 20% down, which there are a lot of programs that help with first-time home buyers. I certainly qualified when I bought my first condo in the same neighborhood that I'm looking on Realtor online. So I love the concept of it. I think some of the numbers had me a little bit more concerned, and certainly some of the risks that you first presented, and the turnover, just a lot of those what ifs. What if we were to have another housing bubble, or not even a bubble, but just a slight downturn? So in 10 years from now, they are not valued at 2% increase year over year, but actually maybe took a bit of a dip. What does that look like? I think there's just a lot there with a pretty large investment on the front end with very little guarantee, and that has me a little bit more concerned. Again, in general, I ran on this concept of rent to own, actual market rate housing. I love the idea of it. These numbers didn't quite add up to what I would hope, I guess.
I think the other thing is that this is assuming new construction. I think there are opportunities for the city to buy existing stuff as well, which might be cheaper depending on the housing at the time. Maybe it's converting. I mean, there are some rentals out there that are kind of like built like condos, and that maybe that something like that comes on sale, and the city buys that, and maybe invests a little bit into it, but uses that as the foundation, and that might be a cheaper way of getting in as well, depending on what we're doing. So there are other alternatives and ways of doing this besides just new construction.
And the one other comment was that for this overall size and all the math that we just were kind of going through, again, a little hard to follow this at this hour, but the fact that it impacts 10 families, that feels rather low given the numbers we just saw. You certainly have to start somewhere, but that was the other thing that kind of caught my eye in terms of the investment from CETA and in terms of what we're doing with that TID money, and then to say that we've impacted 10 households. That feels kind of like a small lift.
Yeah, I guess I see it as a generational impact as well, and that's where something like the workforce apartments that are out there, that's a short-term help for a lot of people. And I see this as a generational thing, and I think it compounds, and that's where the real benefits are in that compounding of the next generations down, because they're building that generational wealth that you're not doing in an apartment.
If I could just comment briefly, Mr. Chairman, on those points, which I think are great points. First, I want to make sure that the commissioners have a chance to take those that would like to take a little deeper dive into those risk questions. Again, I direct you to page 23 of the full report. That's Exhibit 5, and it gets into more detail on each one of the risk factors and what we see as some of the mitigating approaches to address some of those factors. And some of what was just raised here is addressed by that. But I'd like to also go back to that point about the new versus existing construction. Certainly, there is product that exists in Fitchburg. We know of that. We looked at that. It's similar to what we're talking about at a lower cost than this, because it was built at a time when those costs were different, and that's the reason that those products can be offered at a little lower cost than what this particular product offers. And yes, this program can be applied to existing as well as new construction in order to stretch the dollar further. But I also like to put into context the point about the $3 million of roughly $3 to $4 million here of total cost. There's two ways to think about that. One is that if you utilize the bank financing and only put in the equity portion that's required up front, if we understand the numbers correctly from one of your districts that's closing most recently, you may have in the neighborhood about $4 million from that district to utilize initially. The $4 million could be applied to the equity portion only, and then use the bank financing for the loan portion, and you'd end up with 40 units, not the 10, in rough terms, for impact as a result of that. So just another way to think about how to capitalize and utilize and leverage the dollars that are there.
And if I could just maybe add to what Mike said, I think the other benefit we've talked about with this program, it will work for new or existing, but it's also gets repaid. So it's not one and done. A lot of the programs that are available that provide a down payment, that money is not recovered, and to the extent we've designed this program, we've tried to recover as much as possible so that you can do additional units, not today, but down the road then when this unit is sold.
Additional thoughts, Emily?
Yeah, this program is really exciting, and I have a lot of heart for it. I had two questions about it. The first is, are you guys targeting any neighborhoods in particular in Fitchburg? And my second question was, have any banks identified special purpose credit programs, or do they have special purpose credit programs set up that would be applicable to this project?
Well, on the second question first, both specifically Park Bank and Oak Bank representatives that we spoke to indicated that they felt that this program could be teamed with some of the other things that they've been talking about and thinking about. It would further enhance their ability to meet some of their other obligations in the area of the Community Reinvestment Act obligations of their banks. And so I guess that's a general yes to that second question. On the first question, in terms of location, we don't have a specific site at this point yet. In the survey that we did that you all were part of, there were areas that were identified in the North Fish Hatchery Road corridor that were specifically referenced as being potential locations and sites. All of that is summarized in the survey results that are contained as an appendix in the back of the report. But one thing we mentioned in the report is that the sooner that we can identify a location, the more we can do to refine the numbers in this program to make them more reliable in relationship to the actual cost that would be attendant to that particular site, be it the acquisition or the unique zoning requirements of that site or the configuration, what have you. Identifying a location and locking up a location, frankly, would be very important going forward.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Someone want to do a motion then, if there's no other questions or anything?
Can you quickly explain what is exactly the resolution? It's to approve the program feasibility study that's already been completed? Or am I missing something?
Is that right, Mike?
For the, my live, Mike Zimmerman, Economic Development Director for the City of Fitchburg, for the feasibility study and the program parameters at this point in time. In the 2022 budget, we have another line item in there to now go to the next phase that Mike and Steve were talking about, where we really zero in on a specific site. And then they go to that next level of analysis based on a specific site area that we're talking. That's also where, at the request of one of the Housing Committee members and one of the CETA members, that they're going to kind of do a dual track to look at it purely from a market-based perspective, but then they're also going to, they provided us with an additional proposal to look at it through a land trust model. But what they're hearing right now is that this is a pilot program, and we're going to kind of launch it, that the market-based one is probably the preferred option there, as far as less uncertainty and getting our private sector partners, to collaborate with us on the program. But we will look at that alternative just to see. I think I would just add that Mike and Steve have already said that I think one of the benefits that we're looking at is not only getting some folks that currently aren't in home ownership into first-time home buyers, and also wealth building. I think that's another good community goal as part of this program. But then I think that it would be a sustainable endowment program. So we might have 10 families initially, But if the program is successful and we replenish our fund again, hopefully that continues to recycle, and we've got another 10 families that we're impacting and helping to get into home ownership and build some wealth. So we think those are good, laudable community goals for Fitchburg.
Yeah. And I guess what we're really approving tonight is that this feasibility study is done. We think it seems feasible. It seems something we want to pursue further. Obviously, there's some things that, you know, we might need to change as we go further, but we want to take the next step of kind of trying to implement it. You know, we think the feasibility is there.
Yeah, we didn't want to move on to looking at specific sites if there wasn't support for the overall kind of program goals and objectives and this approach. So that's why we just wanted to kind of get that formal approval from this body, CETA, and then it'll go to Finance and Council as well.
All right. Randy?
You're looking for a motion?
Oh, sure.
You're finished with discussion? Well, motion to approve Resolution R-175-21.
Second.
Sent by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, report from department, Sonia? No report, all right. See you in a month, I guess. No other announcements. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Say it. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.